Also, meine Damen und Herren, es tut mir leid, aber mein Deutsch ist schrecklich. Das reicht nur für die Skiverleih und vielleicht die Oktoberfesten. Also das werde ich in Englisch machen. So hello, my name is Ynzo and I'm the Chief Evangelist of Tony's. And I read on this poster today, content is our happy place. So today I'd like to talk from a perhaps higher generic level about happiness. Because I think chocolate might well be the most concentrated piece of happiness in the world, right? So if you're having a lousy week, there's nothing better to fix that lousy week than at the end of the week munching down on a big fat bar of chocolate, right? I see people nodding, nice. And maybe if you're having a crappy week, there's nothing better to fix that crappy week than 2 bars of chocolate. Nice suggestion. So chocolate is the solution to perhaps everything. Or at least that's what I say at home. And when I talk about home, I have 2 kids, Tom and Veerle, of the age of 11 and 13. And Tom and Veerle might well be amongst the happiest kids in the world. And it shows through the fact that their friends suspiciously more often come play at our place than that Tom and Veerle go play somewhere else. And my wife says it has something to do with the proper education and how lovely and sweet they are. I think it has something to do with the stacks of chocolate that I have in my basement. But anyway, if you travel from here, Munich, no more than, I would say, 8, 9, 10 hours southwards, you can find yourself with your feet on farms in Ivory Coast amongst kids of the same age as my Tom and Veerle that find themselves on the other end of that happiness spectrum. And the bitter reality is that it both has to do with the same thing, chocolate, or in their case, cocoa beans. So, today I have good news and bad news for you. The good news is, and this is my Oprah Winfrey moment, you're all going home with chocolate. Yeah, you get chocolate, and you get chocolate, and you get... Thank you for that interaction, lovely, thank you. They bought it, huh? Thank them later. The bad news is, though, that in the next half hour, I'm going to make you responsible for the story behind chocolate. So, if you don't want to carry any burden of responsibility in your life, which is a great light feeling, and this is an excellent moment to simply leave, but leave your chocolate behind. Or else, bear with me, and I'll tell you a story about cocoa. So how does the world of cocoa look? Cocoa grows around the equator. There's a little bit of cocoa that comes from Asia. There's a little bit of cocoa that comes from South America, where originally cocoa comes from. But the majority of all cocoa is grown on millions of tiny farms in Western Africa. There's no big cocoa plantations. These are 1, 2, max 3 hectare sized family-run businesses. That's one side of the value chain. The other side of the value chain is billions of consumers like you and I who just want to be able to munch down on a full bar of chocolate every single day in your life without having to feel any sense of guilt. In the middle of that value chain, there's only a handful of companies that actually produce chocolate from cocoa. So these are the bigger industrials like Cargill and Callebaut, and the better-known brand names like Nestle, Mars, Hershey's, Mondelez, Meiji. But I would say no more than 10 companies produce about 97% of all chocolate in the whole wide world. And it's in their interest that the price of cocoa remains low. And in our opinion, that price is inhumanly low. Because how does that look? Of a bar of chocolate that's sold for, say, an average of €2.80 in the stores, no more than 10, 12 cents actually goes to the farmer that grows that cocoa. And to put that in perspective in this room of smart people, in Ivory Coast, the average cocoa farmer grows about 1,000 kilos of cocoa beans per year. For a current market price of €1.17 per kilo, that means that these farmers have less than €1,200 revenue per year on their cocoa. And that leads to them and their family members living of 47 euro cents available income per person per day. Let that sink in for a second. 47 euro cents per person per day. That's way below the poverty level that's stated at €2.11 for a country like Ivory Coast. And we find that value chain utterly unequally divided. So how does that look? From 2 countries in Western Africa, Ghana and Ivory Coast, comes about 60% of all cocoa in the whole wide world. And that's grown on about 2.5 million farms. Now, that wasn't easy for us to find out because they don't go to the Chamber of Commerce to enlist themselves. But Tulane University did research there, about 2.5 million farms in Ghana and Ivory Coast alone. And on those farms, there's 2.3 million children that work there, which in itself, we don't mind. If those kids are old enough and go to school and come home and in harvest season help mom and dad pick up some cocoa beans and add to the revenue of the farm. I mean, that's common practice in Western Europe as well. But that's not the reality in Western Africa, because about 90% of these kids work under illegal circumstances. So that means they work with chemicals, heavy machinery, walk around with big sharp machetes, or walk around with bags of cocoa beans that weigh 60 kilos per bag. 60 kilos per bag, at the age of 6, 7, 8, 9 years old. And in the very worst case, at least 30,000 children, according to the latest figures of the Global Slavery Index, work under circumstances that we call modern slavery. So, for example, they're lured from neighboring countries like Burkina Faso under false pretenses. Like, you can earn some money in the cocoa industry and send home some money, and you become a cocoa farmer someday. But these kids disappear in that industry. And we find that ridiculous in 2019 for a product that nobody actually needs, right? Chocolate. There's only very few people that have it in the bottom of the Maslow pyramid for themselves. So these are statistics, but let me show you a little clip of a couple of these kids.
Je suis Kaum Félix, j'ai 16 ans. J'ai travaillé dans une plantation de cacao de 1999 en 2003.
Je m'appelle Kaum Herman, j'ai 18 ans. J'ai travaillé à la plantation de cacao 1999 en 2003.
Je m'appelle Kaum Touré, j'ai 18 ans. J'étais travaillé dans la plantation en 99.
Je n'étais pas payé. J'étais forcé de travailler.
J'étais forcé de travailler. Je n'avais pas la liberté pour quitter l'école.
On ne m'a pas payé. On m'a forcé de travailler.
Et puis on ne vous laisse jamais causer entre parents. Si on te voit causer avec ton parent, bon, on te tue ou bien on te mate très bien là et puis on te fait changer de compte.
C'est fini, madame?
So what you see here, or actually who you see here at the end, is Kaum Touré. Kaum Touré is asked to sign a witness statement, which I'll get back to later on. And he's told, you know, if you don't have a signature, just jot down your first name on the line, and that's fine too. But Kaum Touré can't read or write. And he's utterly ashamed of this. He can only jot down an X on that place. These kids are not just robbed of their childhood, but honestly, in my opinion, also robbed of the whole future. Now, if you realize that in the middle of that value chain that I just described, there's only a handful of companies that, in our opinion, are responsible for the problems in the chocolate industry, you could also reason that that problem is easily solved, right? If it's only a handful of companies that are responsible, that need to change their ways. And in 2001, there were two American senators that realized the same thing, Senator Harkin and Senator Engel, that set up the Harkin and Engel Protocol to eradicate the worst forms of child labor from the cocoa industry within 5 years' time. And the Harkin and Engel Protocol was signed by all of the CEOs of these big chocolate companies that I just mentioned. And then you think you're there, right? But unfortunately, the Harkin and Engel Protocol was and is a so-called non-binding agreement. And trust me, non-binding agreements don't get you anywhere. And it shows because now, 18 years down the line, none of the goals in the Harkin and Engel Protocol have been achieved. In 2005, there was a Dutch television show called Keuringsdienst van Waarde, which is more or less the 60 Minutes of Food or the Food CIA, so an investigative journalistic program looking at the reality behind the, let me put this in blunt Dutch, the bullshit of marketing. And Teun van de Keuken, the journalist, was shocked when he realized that almost at the end of the term of the Harkin and Engel Protocol, nothing had changed in the chocolate industry. Even worse, nothing had actually been done towards change in that chocolate industry. But Teun had an issue because Teun is a television journalist and none of these big players wanted to speak to him on camera. So Teun came up with a smart move. Teun bought 10 different bars of different brands of chocolate, of which he was sure that somewhere in the value chain there was forced child labor. And he put a camera on himself, And he took a bite of each of those bars, and he called the international alarm number, 112. And he said, I want to turn myself in as a chocolate criminal. It was quiet on the other end of the line. They don't get these phone calls every day. And the lady said, why? And he said, well, by buying and consuming chocolate, of which I know that there's forced child labor in there, I make myself complicit of financing child slavery. And that's illegal, so you have to come and arrest me. Teun even reasoned, he said, if at the end of the afternoon in Amsterdam in a park, I buy a ridiculously cheap second-hand bicycle from a guy that doesn't smell too well, I can rest assured that's not a legal second-hand bicycle, and I'm buying a stolen bicycle, and I make myself responsible for the theft of the bicycle. It's called fencing in legal terms. So he said, you have to come and arrest me. Now you can imagine Teun still wasn't being taken seriously. The lady actually hung up the phone. And Teun hired an expensive lawyer and set up a court case against himself, which was a brilliant move because Teun worked for a small production company, and if he would have sued one of these big players, he'd have a platoon of lawyers on his doorstep the next day. He wouldn't even get to a trial. And in this case, they could only watch and stand by and see what the verdict of the judge would be, and they would have to abide by that verdict. Unfortunately, after a lengthy pre-trial, the judge said, Mr. van der Keuken, morally, you're completely right. But legally, I can't prosecute you. Because I can't prove the causality, the direct relationship between the bars that you ate and the beans that were picked by Kaum Herman from the movie or was flown in as a witness in that court case. And then we realized something that still today very few people realize, that if you buy a 100% fair trade bar of chocolate, you can't be sure that there's 100% fair trade cocoa beans in that bar of chocolate. Because cocoa is a so-called mass balance product. So that means all cocoa beans, certified or not, are thrown on a big heap, the world market, and chocolate producers buy their beans from the back end of that world market and create their chocolate. It's like having a green energy contract. You don't get 100% green energy from your wall outlet, but you do add to the mix in that energy mix. So Teun had an issue. Teun didn't have the court sentence that he wanted, and he didn't have the interviews that he wanted to do. So Teun said, you know what? I'll change the system from within. And Teun started his own little chocolate company called Tony's Chocolonely. Tony's, the international name for Teun, which is rather Dutch, and Chocolonely for his lonely battle in the chocolate industry. Hence the unpronounceable brand name Tony's Chocolonely. And don't worry, about 80% of the Dutch always talk about Tony Chocolonely. And it can be even worse. A couple of months ago at a conference, I was introduced as Ynzo from Toko Chocoloco. I'm like, okay, he could have done his homework a bit better, but anyway. Tony's Chocolonely was born, a small chocolate company, but with a huge mission. To not only make our own chocolate 100% slave-free, but to make all chocolate worldwide 100% slave-free. And Teun had the first 5,000 fair trade chocolate bars made in an alarming color, hence the red wrappers around our milk chocolate. And he had 5,000 bars made thinking that we could run a company on a stock of 5,000 bars. Now let me show you a little clip of the very first day that we launched.
Ja, goedemiddag.
Goedemiddag, is dit Alain de Laat?
Jawel,
Meneer de Laat, u spreekt met Teun van der Keuken uit Nederland.
jawel.
Weet u nog wie ik ben?
Ja, ik weet wie u bent.
Nou, ik heb een tijdje geleden bij u allemaal chocola gekocht, hè?
Ja, dat klopt.
En we zijn vanochtend begonnen met de verkoop.
Ja?
En u moet eens even raden hoeveel we er hebben verkocht.
Oh, 1000?
13.000.
13.000?
Ja.
Oei, dan hebt u een probleem, hè?
Ja, dan heb ik een probleem, ja.
I love the Belgians. They're like the polite version of the Dutch, I always say. Anyway, so we obviously hit a chord or a consumer demand, as some consultants would say, amongst people that they want to indulge themselves while still being able to do good for the world around them or society around them. And we're really proud of the fact that we've grown quickly. I mean, we became market leaders in the Netherlands recently, outdoing all traditional competition. And the best-selling chocolate bar in the Netherlands is our caramel sea salt chocolate bar. Nice little statistics. It sells more than twice as much as the next best-selling chocolate bar, which fortunately is our milk chocolate bar, but still. Now, but even though we became market leader, we still try to hold on to that company culture of a small company, because a wise woman, Anita Roddick, the founder of The Body Shop, who died way too young, once said, if you think something small can't make a difference, try sharing your room with a mosquito. And we're the mosquito in the room of the chocolate industry, constantly buzzing, sometimes stinging, and hopefully keeping them awake at night like a proper mosquito should be doing. Now, how do we think we can reach that humongous goal of 100% slave-free chocolate worldwide? First of all, by creating awareness. By creating awareness amongst consumers, because we're convinced that when consumers and retailers simply hand in hand ask more questions about what they put in their shopping baskets or what they put up on their shelves, that the producers of these goods will have to feel the pressure and change their ways. Or as I read 2-3 weeks ago on social media by some hipster, she said, if you want them to stop producing crappy stuff, then stop buying crappy stuff. It's that simple. So how do we create awareness amongst consumers? Well, first of all, by really making sure that our consumers become our serious friends. So those are the people that not just buy our chocolate because they like our chocolate, not just buy our chocolate because they buy into our mission, but that really actively spread that mission amongst friends and family. How do we reach those serious friends? Well, for example, we opened a little store in the heart of Amsterdam 2 years ago in the Beurs van Berlage. Now, for some people, it's seen as a commercial enterprise, which is fine. I don't shy away from commercial enterprises. But for us, the historical context is really interesting because we're literally based 2 floors down from the place where for hundreds of years cocoa beans were traded, because the Beurs van Berlage is the oldest stock exchange in the world. Now, if you think you've tasted all Tony's bars, then you're more than welcome to come to that little store, because we made a machine in there where you can make more than 22,000 different combinations of Tony's. So if you're a goldfish, you can have some extra sea salt in there maybe. So this store wasn't crazy enough for us yet, so recently we announced we want to open our own factory. And we bought this old place at the outskirts of Amsterdam in Zaandam. Again, historically very interesting, because all chocolate used to be made in Zaandam, or in the area of Zaandam near Amsterdam. We bought this place, and our office is going to be there too. The dock officially is still the city of Amsterdam. So if anybody complains that they won't be working in Amsterdam anymore, we'll just put a desk outside right there and they'll be happy. Now, that factory isn't primarily for us to just produce chocolate, which we love to do, but it's there to share our story. So we said, you know what? Let's get at least 300,000 people to our factory per year. Now, 300,000 people per year, you're amongst the top 20 tourist attractions in Holland. And it's not even smack middle downtown Amsterdam, where most tourists think that's only Holland. So we asked our best consultants, how do we get so many people to our factory? And our best consultants are our own kids. And they said, you know, Dad, maybe if you have a roller coaster go through the factory, then you get those many people. So we're going to build our factory, have a roller coaster go through it, and also through our office. So every couple of minutes, you're going to see this utter fear in the eyes of people. It must be great working behind your laptop. And this is all to create awareness. Our second step in our strategy is that we want to show the industry that chocolate can be made in a different way, in a more social way, in a more sustainable way, in our opinion, in a better way. Now, how? By following a set of 5 sourcing principles, as some people would call it. I call it our recipe for slave-free cocoa. What does that mean? That you take full responsibility for your whole value chain. So where the industry said traceable cocoa beans is just not how the system works, we now work with 5,500 farmers in Ghana and Ivory Coast directly that are united in 5 cooperatives. And why do we want this direct relationship with these farmers? Because then we can simply pay a higher price to those farmers directly. So on top of the farm gate price, which is established by the governments of Ghana and Ivory Coast, we pay another about 20% fair trade premium. And on top of that, we pay about 20 to 40% additional Tony's premium to get these farmers to something that we call a living income, which I find ridiculous that it's even debated nowadays whether a farmer should be able to earn a living income. I think it's basic human rights. And that means that they can have a roof over their head, feed their family, send their kids to school, which we find essential, and perhaps even invest a little bit in their farm so they can get out of this spiral downwards and get up again. Because when we started building these long-term relationships with these farmers, we realized that their farms tended to be very outdated with old trees that bear very little cocoa fruit. We asked them, why is that? They said, well, this is a buyer's market. We don't know whether we can actually sell our beans again next year and the year afterwards. So we said, you know what? If you do business with us, we'll guarantee you for 5 years ahead, we'll keep buying your beans. And that's a unilateral agreement. They can walk away whenever they want to, but we're committed to buying their beans for at least 5 years ahead. You know what an NDA is, a non-disclosure agreement? We actually have a DA with them, so they have to show their contracts with to their neighbors. Full transparency. And why 5 years? Because it takes about 5 years for a little sapling to become a fruit-bearing cocoa tree. And then they can invest in their farms and get into the spiral upwards and increase their productivity. So we actually actively help them increase their productivity, but also sometimes decrease their dependency from cocoa as their primary crop. And the last step in our strategy is that we help these cooperatives to professionalize themselves so they have a stronger stand to those buyers in the middle of that value chain that I spoke about. Now, these 5 sourcing principles we share online, and for those few CEOs that still aren't on social media, we also put them on the inside of our wrappers, because we want them to blatantly copy what we do. We want to inspire them to act by copying our business model or even improving on our business model. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you we're being copied like hell. Yeah? There's not a single brand in the Netherlands that doesn't have caramel sea salt nowadays. And that's fine. When we see that, we actively invite those people, normally the CEOs of these companies, and normally on social media, because that kind of ups the pressure. We invite them to come over to our office, have a cup of coffee with us, and then we celebrate them in their copying behavior. But we tell them, no, don't just copy the front end of our brand, also copy the back end of our brand, so our business model and our value chain model. Now, we're really proud of the fact that recently Albert Heijn, the biggest retailer in the Netherlands, started sourcing their own private label chocolate through the same 5 principles and joined us on our open chain platform that we openly invite other producers and brands to also join, to simply follow those 5 steps and do the same as we do. Now, recently Lidl, Belgium and Holland also announced that they are going to source their beans with a direct relationships, and we also invited them on social media to simply join our open chain platform so they don't have to invent the wheel again. And Mars Incorporated, 1 or 2 years ago, also announced that they're going to invest $10 billion in the next 10 years to improve the livelihoods of the farmers in Western Africa. And don't get me wrong, I salute everybody who does anything towards improving those livelihoods. But we're also still that mosquito in that room. So we also pointed to the fact that $10 billion in 10 years is less than 1% of their total revenue. So there's still something to do there, we think. Now, we could have become an NGO. We could have become an activist. We chose to become a commercial chocolate brand, to change that system from within. And some people might call us a social enterprise, which I find fine, because for us, financial success isn't a goal. For us, financial success is an essential mean towards a goal. On the other hand, I more and more debate whether I want to be called a social enterprise, because I simply want to inspire entrepreneurship, Holland, Europe, the galaxy, that if you're financially successful, you have this moral obligation towards society and the planet around you to do something good. I don't see those things as two ends of one spectrum. I think you can be financially successful and can do good for the world at the same time. Now, we always say we're crazy about chocolate, but we're serious about people. Now, we're pretty damn crazy about chocolate. 10, 15 years ago in Holland, you had 4 types of chocolate: white, milk, dark, and something with nuts sprinkled into it. We have about 25 recipes at the moment. 2 weeks ago, we launched our limiteds of this year, which is always around a theme. So 3 bars, this time around spices. So we have 1 with curcuma and chai, 1 with pepper and chili and fudge, and 1 with thyme and honey. And last week, we launched our new relay bar. So it's always in the stores for only half a year, and then it's followed by a new one. It never comes back again. Until, trust me, this is like crack cocaine to a Schoko junkie like me. It's milk chocolate with crumble, pecan, and caramel. Keep it away from me. Echt. Anyway, we're crazy about chocolate. And anytime you walk into our office in Amsterdam, and this is an open invitation for anyone during office hours, please, it's still Amsterdam. And when you walk into our office, the first thing you see is the kitchen where Eva and Celine come up with the craziest recipes every day. And it's nice to come by our office. Why? We have this rule at Tony's that whenever you walk into our office, you never leave without chocolate. So we have the happiest mailman in the world in Amsterdam. Now, we always say we're crazy about chocolate, but we're serious about people. And when it comes to serious about people, we have a list of 5. And on number 1, which might be slightly narcissistic, it's our own team. Because we feel we can only reach that humongous goal of 100% slave-free chocolate by having the most motivated, engaged, and inspired team you can imagine. So we try to make working on such a tough subject as fun as possible. So in your contract at Tony's, it says that you can bring home as much chocolate as you can physically carry, each and every day. And to get that slightly within boundaries, you get free running shoes every year, and we have yoga and boot camp every week. And you guys know what a BMI is, a body mass index? So we used to have a BMI bonus, which obviously became slightly politically incorrect. So we changed it into a maintain your BMI bonus. So at least that year you didn't go up in your BMI, so you don't eat too much chocolate. What else? We have this alarm button on the wall in our office. And if you have anything to celebrate, whether it's private or business, it doesn't matter. You run up to the alarm button, you whack the button, and the alarm doesn't go off, but the disco lights start turning and the logo starts flashing, and everybody starts cheering like crazy without having any idea for what they're cheering yet. And it's all about work happiness. I don't believe in job satisfaction. You know, satisfaction is probably a maximum of 6.5 on a scale of 1 to 10. We talk about real proper work happiness. One more that I love is we don't just have unlimited holidays, we have minimum 28 holidays. So managers are held accountable for their teams being away for at least 28 days a year. We trust them to get their job done anyhow and better come back relaxed and charged again towards your job. And one that I personally love, we have a baby bonus. So not all employers like it when you become pregnant. We applaud it. So if you have a child whilst working at Tony's, on the day of birth, you get 1,000 euros cash in your hands. And if you make a child with somebody else within Tony's, you each get 1,000 euros in your hands. It gets better. If you then call your child Tony, you get another 1,000 euros cash in your hands. So it's a business model to make Tony's, at Tony's, with Tony's, during work time. And I mean, it gives a whole different edge to the Friday afternoon drinks. Anyway, obviously, number one, our team. But more obviously, on number two, those 5,500 farmers that we built these long-term relationships with. And before I start sounding like some kind of marketing gorilla, 5,500 farmers isn't 0.5% yet of the 2.5 million farms that I spoke about at the beginning of my presentation. So we're a drop in the ocean still, unfortunately. We have a long way to go. Number three in our list of series about people are our consumers. So those are the people that buy our bars, or that eat our bars, let me put it like that. And when you call our office, which is the Schoko phone, we have one phone number and we put Schoko in front of everything. If you call the Schoko phone, you never get one of those annoying switchboards that'll go like dial 1 to speak to a human being, dial 2 if you're sure, and dial 3 if you want to wait for 20 minutes. No. If you call the Schoko phone, you get to speak to Paul or Keisha, my office champions. And when Paul and Keisha are busy, all phones in the whole office go off at the same time. Because we find it essential that if a consumer does his or her best to get in touch with us, we show the respect of picking up that phone and speaking back to that person as human to human. I do not believe in a thing like B2B or B2C anymore. I only believe in a new form of capitalism, which is H2H, human to human. On number 4 are the retailers that sell our bars. So those are all the retailers in the Netherlands. That's Whole Foods in the US and Sainsbury's in the UK nowadays, etc., etc. And number 5, the people that make our bars. So we often say we're not a chocolate maker, we're an impact maker through chocolate. Galabout makes our chocolate. And the people that make our wrappers and the people that ship our bars, etc. So that's our list of series about people. Now, if you hear this story about how unequally divided that value chain of cocoa is, isn't it weird to realize that chocolate bars for the last decades or even centuries have always had this perfectly divided, almost Excel spreadsheet kind of shape? And I won't slag off any competition, but if you tend to believe in purple cows, functional silence, then you might even put your brand name on each and every individual block of chocolate, in case a consumer might forget, halfway through the bar, what brand of chocolate he or she had been eating all that time. Now, we thought that was slightly boring, so we made our bars unequally divided. Now, I can tell you, when we launched our unequally divided chocolate bar, we had hell to pay. The phone was ringing off the hook. Our inbox was full of complaints. The most epic complaint I still remember was this mother sending us an email saying, "My kids used to live in perfect harmony." And I speak from my own experience, they always go for the brand block first, and then for some strange reason they go for the button, whilst the chocolate is the same at the side of the button. Anyway, this is lovely. There were a couple of high school students 2 years ago in Holland that made this thesis about how to best share a bar of Tony's between 2, 3, or 4 friends. I love that one. Anyway, what we did at that moment in time, we tried to get in touch with everybody that had a complaint. to explain to them why we had made our bars unequally divided. Because our bars tell the story of that unequally divided world of cocoa in its purest form. Our bars become a discussion piece when you open them at the dinner table. So if you guys make it home with your bar of chocolate, fat chance, but hey, let me give it a try. If you make it home with that bar of chocolate, then you're bound to have to tell that story when you open that bar of chocolate. Because people next to you will ask you, why is that thing so annoyingly unequally divided, right? And why is that relevant? Because we never paid a single cent on paid media. We've never done any form of advertising. It's the bar that tells the story, and hey, maybe me traveling around telling the story too. And for you guys to make it slightly juicier to tell this story at home, 2 anecdotes. One, not everybody knows that we managed to hide the map of Western Africa in our bars. A bit of interaction, thank you. And now there's a second anecdote there. So let me go by the countries that we're talking about here. We're talking about Ghana and Ivory Coast, and then I'm hopping to the right, and then we have Nigeria and Cameroon. In the middle are 2 fully independent and sovereign states called Togo and Benin. But when we launched our unequally divided chocolate bar, at the very last moment we realized we had an issue. Because we love whole hazelnuts at Tony's. And neither in the block of Togo nor in the block of Benin a whole hazelnut would fit. And there'd be the chance that the bar would come out of the machine with a hazelnut pimple on its back end, and we don't like hazelnut pimples on our back end. So we had a strong political discussion. We said, what are we going to do? Are we going to respect the sovereignty of Togo and Benin and start crunching up our hazelnuts like our competitors do? Or do we respect our own personal love for the whole hazelnut and simply join Togo and Benin into one block? Now, as you maybe already see or knew, the hazelnut won that discussion, and we don't tell this story too often in Western Africa. Now, this is how we believe how a small company can make a huge dent in a rusted down industry, in our case, the chocolate industry. And we're convinced that by ourselves we can make our chocolate 100% slave-free. But that's not what we're about. We're about changing the whole norm in the chocolate industry towards 100% slave-free chocolate by working together with governments, with NGO's, with consumers, with retailers and with the rest of the industry.
Het is toch het bewijs dat je wel het verschil kan maken.
Je moet ergens beginnen. Je moet niet nadenken. Je moet gewoon beginnen. Iedereen kan gewoon zijn eigen Tony zijn. Dat is natuurlijk ook het verhaal van deze reep.
Now, before we go into the planned 3.5-hour Q&A session, I want to leave you with the wise words of a guy called Jean-Paul Sartre. And Jean-Paul Sartre once said, once you know something, you cannot unknow something. And once you know something and you're aware, you're responsible. And when you're responsible, it's upon you to act upon that responsibility. So, the very next time you find yourself in a supermarket looking for something to fix a crappy week, or maybe looking for something to celebrate a lovely week, and you're standing in front of that chocolate shelf, or any shelf for that matter, just realize that every purchase you make, but I mean every purchase you make in your life, is a vote for the world you want to live in. Thank you very much.